There are moments in our lives when something shifts so decisively, so unmistakably, that we can feel it not just in our thoughts, but in our body, in our energy, in the very rhythm of our days. And this is one of those moments. Mars entering Aries is not a subtle whisper in the cosmos. It is a clear activating pulse of life force energy that begins to move us forward, often after a period where things may have felt slower, heavier, or less defined. This is a return of fire, a return of momentum, a return of clarity through action. Mars, as you may know, is the planet that governs our drive, our will, our courage, and how we take action in the world. It represents that inner spark that says, I am ready, or sometimes I must move now. And when Mars moves into Aries, it comes home. Aries is the sign that Mars naturally rules. And so this placement is strong, pure, and very direct. There is very little hesitation in this energy. It doesn't second guess itself in the way other signs might. Instead, it acts, it initiates, it begins. And so collectively, we are entering a space where initiation energy is heightened. You may begin to feel a stronger urge to make decisions, to take steps that you may have been postponing, or to finally act on something that has been quietly building within you. Before this shift, many people have been moving through a more reflective or even uncertain phase. There may have been a sense of waiting or of things not quite coming together as clearly as you would have liked. For some, this could have shown up as fatigue, a lack of motivation, or even a questioning of direction. You may have found yourself asking, what is it that I truly want now? Or why does this feel so unclear? This is very natural when we are transitioning out of softer, more inward-looking energies, particularly if Mars has been moving through a sign that diffuses or disperses its intensity. In those times, action can feel less linear and motivation can come in waves rather than in a steady, focused stream. But now, as Mars steps into Aries, there is a noticeable shift. It is as if the fog begins to lift, and in its place comes a sense of urgency, but not in a stressful way, more in a vital, life-affirming way. It is the kind of urgency that reminds you that your life is moving, that time is precious, and that your energy wants to be expressed, not held back. You may feel this as a sudden clarity about what matters to you. You may feel it as a desire to simplify, to cut through confusion, and to move directly toward what feels true. And for some, this may also bring up frustration if you have felt blocked or delayed, because Mars in Aries does not enjoy being restrained. It wants freedom, it wants movement, and it wants authenticity. So if you do notice any impatience arising, it can be helpful to simply observe it without judgment. That impatience is often a sign that your energy is ready to move, that something within you is seeking expression. The invitation here is not to suppress that feeling, but to work with it consciously. This is a beautiful time to begin something new, but equally, it is a powerful time to reconnect with your own inner authority. Aries energy is deeply connected to the self, not in an egoic or self-centered way, but in a pure, instinctual way. It asks, what is true for me and what feels aligned with my path? And in a world where we are often influenced by external expectations, opinions, and pressures, this return to self-awareness is incredibly valuable. You might like to take a few quiet moments, perhaps in the morning or before sleep, and simply tune into your body. Notice where you feel energy building. Notice where you feel excitement, even if it is subtle. And also notice where you feel resistance. Aries energy can help illuminate both of these areas very clearly. A gentle practice that can be supportive during this time is conscious breathing. Just a few slow, intentional breaths, allowing your body to settle and your mind to become clear. From that place, you may find that your next step becomes more obvious, not because you have forced it, but because you have allowed space for it to emerge. Journaling can also be particularly powerful now. You might ask yourself questions such as, what am I ready to begin? Or where in my life am I being called to take action? And perhaps most importantly, what am I no longer willing to delay? There is a courage in Aries that is very pure. It is not about being fearless, but about moving forward even when there is some uncertainty. And this is something we are all being invited to embody in our own way. It is also worth noting that this energy can influence our relationships. You may notice a desire for more honesty, more direct communication, and less tolerance for anything that feels inauthentic. This can be very positive as it allows for greater clarity and truth. However, it is important to balance this with compassion, both for yourself and for others. Mars in in Aries can sometimes be very quick to react. And so there is a gentle reminder here to pause before responding, especially in moments of heightened emotion. That pause does not diminish your truth. It simply allows you to express it in a way that is constructive and aligned with your deeper intentions. From a broader perspective, this shift can feel like a turning point. It is as if the universe is offering a renewed sense of momentum, encouraging us to step forward with greater confidence and clarity. And while each of us will experience this in our own unique way, the underlying theme is one of activation. You are being invited to participate in your life more fully, to engage with your path rather than waiting for circumstances to dictate your direction. And perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this energy is that it reminds us of our own inner strength. That strength has always been there, even during times when you may have felt uncertain or disconnected. Mars in Aries simply brings it back into focus, illuminating it in a way that feels immediate and alive. As you move through these days, you may begin to notice small but meaningful shifts, a decision that feels easier to make, a conversation that feels more honest, a step that you feel ready to take, even if it once seemed daunting. These are all signs that the energy is working through you, supporting your growth and your evolution. And so rather than rushing or pushing, the invitation is to move with awareness, to honor your own rhythm within this surge of energy, to trust that you will know when it is time to act and when it is time to simply observe and integrate, because this is not just about movement for the sake of movement. It is about aligned action, action that is rooted in truth, in clarity, and in a deeper understanding of who you are becoming. And as this energy continues to unfold, it begins to open new pathways, both internally and externally, guiding you gently but firmly toward the next chapter of your journey. As this momentum begins to build, you may start to notice that life itself seems to respond more quickly to your intentions. There is a certain immediacy that comes with Mars in Aries, where the space between thought and action becomes shorter, and the feedback from the world around you can feel more direct. This is not something to fear, but rather something to work with consciously, because it allows you to see very clearly how your energy is being expressed. When we enter a cycle like this, it can almost feel as though the universe is inviting us to become more awake within our own lives, not just drifting or reacting, but actively participating, choosing, initiating. And for many, this can feel both empowering and a little unfamiliar, especially if the previous weeks have been more introspective or even emotionally complex. You may have been processing things on a deeper level without fully realizing it. Old emotions, past experiences, or even subconscious patterns may have been surfacing quietly, asking to be acknowledged and understood. That kind of inner work does not always feel productive in the moment, but it creates the foundation for this next phase. Because now, with Mars in Aries, you are not just aware, you are ready to do something with that awareness. There is a beautiful synergy here between reflection and action. It is as though everything you have been feeling, questioning, or sensing is now asking to be expressed in a more tangible way. And this is where intention becomes very important. Mars in Aries can move quickly, sometimes so quickly that it bypasses deeper consideration. So the more conscious you are about your intentions, the more aligned your actions will be. You might like to gently ask yourself before taking a step, is this coming from clarity or from impulse? Neither is inherently wrong, but awareness allows you to choose rather than react. For some, this energy may awaken a strong desire to reclaim personal power. There can be a realization that perhaps you've been giving your energy away in certain situations or holding back in ways that no longer feel appropriate. Aries energy does not ask for permission. It encourages you to stand in your own truth, to honor your own path, and to trust your instincts. This can be particularly significant in relationships. You may find yourself becoming more aware of where you need stronger boundaries or where you desire more independence and authenticity. Conversations may become more direct, and while this can bring clarity, it can also bring moments of tension if others are not moving at the same pace. So again, there is a gentle invitation to balance honesty with kindness. You can be clear without being forceful. You can be direct without being reactive. And often, It is that quiet confidence, that grounded sense of self that creates the most meaningful and lasting shifts. It is also worth remembering that Aries energy is the beginning of the zodiac cycle. It carries with it a sense of newness, of fresh starts, of stepping into uncharted territory. And whenever we begin something new, there is naturally an element of uncertainty. You may not have all the answers, you may not see the full path ahead, but there is a trust here that is very instinctual. It is the kind of trust that says, I will discover this as I go. And that is a very different energy from needing to control every outcome. Mars in Aries thrives when it is allowed to explore, to experiment, to take action without overanalyzing every detail. This does not mean being careless, but it does mean being open to the process of discovery. If you feel called to start something, even in a small way, this is a beautiful time to do so. It could be a project, a new habit, a conversation, or even a shift in how you approach your daily life. The scale is not as important as the intention behind it. What matters is that you are engaging with your own energy in a conscious and meaningful way. At the same time, it is important to stay connected to your body. Mars is a very physical energy, and when it is strong, it can manifest as restlessness or excess energy if it is not expressed. Gentle movement can be incredibly supportive during this time. Walking, stretching, or any form of physical activity that feels good to you can help to ground this energy and keep it flowing in a balanced way. You might also notice that your tolerance for stagnation becomes lower. Situations that once felt manageable may now feel restrictive or draining. This is not necessarily a sign that something is wrong, but rather an indication that your energy is evolving. You are becoming more aware of what aligns with you and what does not. And with that awareness comes choice. You may choose to make changes. You may choose to have conversations, or you may simply choose to shift your own perspective and approach. All of these are valid expressions of this energy. What matters is that you are responding consciously rather than reacting unconsciously. There is also a creative aspect to Mars in Aries that is sometimes overlooked. This is not just about action in a practical sense, but also about creative expression. You may feel inspired to create, to initiate ideas, to bring something into form that previously existed only as a thought or a feeling. Allow yourself to explore that. There is no need for perfection here. In fact, Aries energy often thrives when we let go of the need to get everything exactly right. It is more about authenticity than perfection. It is about expression rather than refinement. And as you move through this energy, you may begin to notice a subtle but powerful shift in your relationship with yourself, a greater sense of trust, a greater willingness to listen to your instincts, a deeper connection to your own inner guidance. This is one of the greatest gifts of this transit, because while external circumstances may change and while opportunities may arise, the most important transformation is the one that happens within you. The recognition that you have the ability to direct your own energy, that you can choose how you respond, how you act, and how you move forward. And this recognition does not need to be dramatic. It can be quiet. It can be subtle. It can show up in the smallest of ways: a decision made with confidence, a boundary set with clarity, a step taken with intention. These are the moments where real change begins. And as this energy continues to unfold, it starts to build a sense of momentum that can carry you forward in ways that feel both exciting and deeply aligned, not because everything is perfectly clear, but because you are willing to move with what is true for you in the present moment. There is something very empowering about that, something very liberating. And as you begin to embody this energy more fully, you may find that life itself starts to open in response, offering new possibilities, new directions, and new experiences that reflect the shift that is taking place within you. As this energy continues to unfold, there is a deeper layer that begins to reveal itself, one that goes beyond action alone and touches something much more profound within the soul. Because while Mars in Aries is often spoken about in terms of movement, courage, and initiation, there is also a sacred dimension to this placement that invites you to reconnect with your inner truth in a very direct and uncompromising way. This is where we begin to understand that not all action is equal. Some actions come from fear, from pressure, from a sense of needing to prove something. But the highest expression of this energy is action that comes from alignment. Action that arises naturally when you are connected to your authentic self, when you are listening inwardly rather than being driven by external noise. And so there is a quiet question that may begin to surface for many of you during this time. Is this truly mine? Not just in terms of what you are doing, but in terms of what you are carrying, what you are pursuing, and even what you believe about yourself. Mars in Aries has a way of stripping things back to their essence. It does not complicate, it simplifies, it brings you back to a very pure sense of identity, one that exists beneath conditioning, beneath expectation, beneath the layers of who you have been told to be. For some, this can feel incredibly liberating. For others, it may feel slightly unsettling because it asks for honesty. It asks you to see clearly where you may have been compromising yourself or where you may have been following a path that no longer resonates. And yet, there is no judgment in this process, only awareness. You may notice that certain desires become stronger, more defined, not fleeting wants, but deeper callings that feel persistent and steady. These are worth paying attention to. Aries energy does not linger on what is superficial. It moves toward what feels alive. At the same time, anything that feels out of alignment may also become more apparent. You may feel less willing to tolerate situations that drain your energy or diminish your sense of self. This is not about rejection or conflict, but about clarity, about recognizing what supports your growth and what does not. In this way, Mars in Aries can be a powerful catalyst for change, not because it forces anything, but because it illuminates truth so clearly that change becomes a natural response. It is also important to consider the emotional body during this time. While Aries is a fire sign and often associated with action, it can also bring emotions to the surface quite quickly. There may be moments where feelings arise suddenly, whether that is enthusiasm, frustration, excitement, or even anger. Rather than seeing these emotions as something to manage or suppress, it can be helpful to view them as energy in motion. Each emotion carries information. Each one is a signal pointing you towards something that matters. If you feel frustration, it may be highlighting an area where you feel blocked or restricted. If you feel excitement, it may be pointing you towards something that is aligned and expansive. And if you feel a surge of courage, that is often a sign that you are ready to step into something new. The key is to create a small space between the feeling and the action. Just enough space to become aware, to ask yourself, what is this showing me? In that space, you gain the ability to respond consciously rather than reacting automatically. This is where your power truly lies. There is also a strong connection during this time between Mars and the body itself. You may feel more physically energized or at times more sensitive to stress if the energy is not being expressed. This is why grounding practices become so valuable. Spending time in nature, even briefly, can help to stabilize your energy. Walking barefoot on the earth, feeling the air, noticing the sounds around you, these simple acts can bring you back into balance. They allow the intensity of the fire element to be held within a calm and steady container. You might also find benefit in returning to your breath throughout the day, not as a task, but as a gentle anchor. A few slow breaths can shift your entire state, bringing clarity where there was tension and presence where there was distraction. There is something else unfolding here as well, something that speaks to the collective journey we are all part of. When Mars moves through Aries, it often brings a surge of individual awakening. People begin to reconnect with their own voice, their own truth, their own sense of direction. And while this can sometimes create moments of friction in the outer world, it is also how evolution happens. Each person stepping into their authenticity contributes to a larger shift in consciousness. It creates a ripple effect that extends far beyond the individual. So as you navigate this energy, it may be helpful to remember that your personal growth is not separate from the collective. The courage you cultivate within yourself, the clarity you embody, the authenticity you express, all of this contributes to a greater awakening. And yet this is not something that needs to feel overwhelming. It begins with very simple choices. Choosing to listen to yourself, choosing to honor your energy, choosing to take a step, however small, in the direction that feels true. There is also a timing element here that is quite significant. Aries energy marks the beginning, but it does not require you to complete everything immediately. It simply asks you to begin, to take that first step, even if you cannot yet see the full path ahead. And in many ways, that first step is the most important because it shifts your energy from contemplation into creation. It signals to the universe and to yourself that you are ready to engage with your life in a more active and intentional way. You may find that once you take that step, the next one becomes clearer, not because everything is planned, but because movement itself creates clarity. It reveals what works, what does not, and what wants to evolve. There is a rhythm to this process, a natural unfolding that does not need to be rushed. Even though Mars in Aries can feel fast-paced, there is still wisdom in pacing yourself, in listening to your body, in honoring your energy levels, in allowing space for integration. Because true transformation is not just about action, it is about alignment between your inner world and your outer expression. And as this alignment begins to strengthen, you may notice a growing sense of confidence, not the kind that seeks validation, but the kind that comes from knowing yourself, from trusting your instincts, from recognizing that you are capable of navigating whatever arises. This confidence is not something you need to force. It emerges naturally as you continue to engage with this energy in a conscious and intentional way. And as it does, it begins to open new doors within you, revealing possibilities that may have previously felt out of reach, and inviting you to step forward with a renewed sense of purpose and presence. As we allow this energy to settle more deeply into our awareness, there is a quiet realization that begins to emerge, and it is this: you are not the same person you were even a short time ago. Something within you has shifted. It may be subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it is there in the way you think, in the way you feel, in the way you respond to life. Mars in Aries does not ask for transformation in a distant or abstract sense. It brings it into the present moment. It makes it real, tangible, and available now. And so the question gently becomes, how will you meet this version of yourself that is emerging? Because with every energetic shift, there is an invitation, not a demand, not a pressure, but an invitation to step into greater alignment with who you are becoming. And sometimes that means letting go of older versions of yourself that no longer quite fit, old ways of responding, old stories, even old expectations. This is not about rejecting the past, but about honoring it as something that has brought you to this point, while also recognizing that you are no longer bound by it. There can be a sense of renewal here that is very powerful, a feeling that you're beginning again in some way, even if your outer circumstances have not changed dramatically. This is the essence of Aries energy. It is the spark of new life, the moment where something begins, often quietly before it becomes visible. And as this new beginning unfolds within you, there is a natural strengthening of your inner guidance. You may notice that you are less inclined to seek external validation and more inclined to trust your own instincts. Decisions may begin to feel clearer, not because they are easier, but because you are more connected to yourself. And to trust that each step you take, no matter how small, is part of a much larger unfolding that is guiding you gently and steadily toward a life that feels more true, more aligned, and more deeply your own.